Welcome to the video on attachment styles. In this video, we're going to talk about everything attachment styles and how to heal from them. So let's get into it. As you can see from the chart here, we are all desiring to get to what we call securely attached. Securely attached people have great relationships. The problem is that by default, we naturally don't run that way, right? There's something that happened to us in childhood that caused us to create certain patterns of behavior that caused us to feel safe in certain situations. And so underneath all of that, and this is something that a lot of other people do not talk about, is we have energies, feminine and masculine energies, and they change the way that we heal through whatever attachment style we're in. So what are attachment styles? Attachment styles are the patterns that we subconsciously follow in relationships based on how safe, seen, and soothed that we felt while growing up, especially from our caregivers. So they shape how we handle conflict, how we express our needs, how close or distant we feel in intimacy, and how we react when love feels threatened. Your attachment style is basically your default setting for connection. It's not who you are, it's just how you learn to protect yourself. And the good news is you can rewire this. So let's get into the other ones. We're going to start with a secure attachment. Again, this is the goal. This is where we want to get to have a beautiful and fun, loving, passionate marriage, right? So what is a secure attachment? Secure attachment is the ability to stay close and connected without losing yourself in the process. You're able to give and receive love without chasing, controlling, or shutting down. You can express your needs clearly, hear your partner without defensiveness, and stay grounded when emotions run high. A securely attached person, they communicate openly even when it's hard. They hold boundaries without guilt. They don't need constant reassurance to feel safe, and they trust themselves in the relationship. This is what emotional safety looks like. It's not perfection, but stability, presence, and mutual respect. This type of person can sit with discomfort, theirs and others. They're grounded enough to hold space without fixing, avoiding, or absorbing it. They don't confuse discomfort with danger. They understand that emotions can be hard sometimes, right? And they're part of intimacy. They're not a threat to it. Right. This is, again, where we want to go. This is the goal in everything that we're doing, right? Someone who's able to make a mistake and then not feel drowned by shame and guilt, right? Their partner doesn't just drown them in shame and guilt, right? We make a mistake and we come together and we talk about it and we heal from it and we move on. It's not the end all be all. It doesn't ruin your day when something bad happens. Right? Okay, so now we're going to move into a dismissive avoidant style here. So what is a dismissive avoidant attachment style? A dismissive avoidant attachment looks like you're pulling away when things get too close, even when parts of you want to connect. You value independence to the point where your emotions feel like a threat. You downplay your needs, you avoid vulnerability, and you keep people at a distance so that you can stay in control. This style often forms when emotions weren't safe growing up. So now when someone gets too close, your system reacts like it's under attack, even when they're not doing anything wrong. A dismissive avoidant person might shut down in conflict or go silent for days, feel smothered when someone gets too emotionally close, stay logical and disconnected when their partner needs presence. They feel safer alone than together. So at the core here, it's not about that you don't want love, it's that you've learned that love costs your freedom. Healing means learning to stay present without feeling trapped. So this type of person, they will avoid discomfort, especially in emotional, intense situations. If someone gets upset, they detach, they intellectualize, or they disappear. Sitting in someone else's pain feels like losing control or that you're being blamed. They learned early on that emotions are unsafe or even useless, so they minimize or ignore them altogether. And this one here was me to a T. I was all those things. Anytime my wife brought any kind of emotional towards me and I had to sit in that discomfort with her, I just couldn't do that. And so I rationalized away, or I blamed away, or I just shut down emotionally. I could not sit in that discomfort with her. I did not have the ability to stay present with her and have those conversations. All right, moving on to the next one. Anxious attachment style. So an anxious attachment is a constant fear that love will leave. So you try to hold on tighter. You crave connection, but it never feels like enough. You overthink, over pursue, and often lose yourself trying to earn someone else's attention or reassurance. This style usually forms when connection was inconsistent growing up. Sometimes love was there, sometimes it wasn't. So now your nervous system stays on high alert, always scanning for signs of rejection. A person with an anxious attachment might overanalyze texts, tones, or time gaps between communications. They feel panic or anger when someone pulls away, right? They become overly responsible for fixing relationship problems. They confuse intensity with intimacy. So at the core here, it's not that you're too much, it's that you've been taught that love is something that you have to chase, right? Healing means learning to trust yourself, to regulate your own nervous system and stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else close, right? So they struggle to sit with the discomfort without overreacting, right? They feel responsible for somebody else's emotions. Even when someone's upset, they try to fix it immediately, often out of fear of abandonment. Right? Their own discomfort triggers a spiral. Did I do something wrong? Are they mad at me now? Right? So what you're going to find in relationships is the avoidant person marries the anxious person because the avoidant shuts down, so that triggers the anxious person, and so they chase harder. They chase harder, the avoidant shuts down more, right? And it's a vicious spiral. But polar opposites attract, and those two types of people generally find each other somehow out in the ether. Most likely, you guys are living in some kind of form of this attachment style now. One of you is a dismissive, one of you is an anxious. All right, and then we're going to move into the last one here. This is a disorganized, or otherwise known as fearful avoidant. So a disorganized attachment is the most chaotic of the four. It's a painful mix of wanting connection, but at the same time fearing it. Right? You crave love, but when someone gets close, your system goes into panic. You may cling one moment and then push them away the next. You feel unsafe being alone, but even more unsafe feeling fully seen. And I use this example a lot. Your girlfriend will kick you out of the house, and then the moment you walk through that door, they're like, why are you leaving me? Right? Mix of emotions constantly back and forth. So this often comes from trauma, especially in early relationships where the people that you trusted were also the ones that hurt you or scared you. Your nervous system learned that love is dangerous. So a person with a disorganized attachment might swing between anxious and avoidant behaviors, have intense reactions, and then feel shame for those very same reactions. Sabotage healthy relationships out of fear that they'll eventually collapse. They struggle to trust even the people that they care about the most. At your core, you've never really known what true safety in love feels like. Healing starts with rebuilding safety inside of yourself so that you can stop running from the very thing that you long for. So this type of person struggles deeply to sit with discomfort, both their own discomfort and others' discomfort. They swing between over-involving themselves and shutting down completely. When discomfort does show up, they might panic or try to fix it, or emotionally detached, often in the very same conversation. Their nervous system reads discomfort as danger, so they either run towards it out of fear of abandonment, or they run away from it to avoid being hurt. They want connection, but they don't trust it, and that makes emotional discomfort feel unbearable. Healing means learning to sit still in this storm without needing to fix it, flee it, or collapse underneath it. And from here, we're going to move over to energies. This is how energies play into these different attachment styles, right? We got the masculine, we got the feminine energies. So what are they, and how do they connect to attachment styles? In every person, there are two core energies, masculine and feminine. Now, these energies are not about gender. They're about how you're wired to lead, relate, and respond under pressure. The masculine energy is all about structure, direction, logic, and presence. The feminine energy is about flow, emotion, intuition, and connection. See, everybody has both, but one is usually at your core. Most men usually have a core that is masculine, and most women usually at their core is feminine. Now, that doesn't mean they don't put on the mask of the masculine and try to control everything, which is what a lot of women do. And then men don't tend to put on the mask of the feminine and try to shut down and try to avoid conflict, because that's what a lot of men tend to do, right? And that core energy directly affects how you experience or express your attachment style, right? So for example, a masculine core anxious person will often chase with logic, try to fix a relationship, or overperform to feel worthy. A feminine core anxious person might over-nurture, over-give, or collapse emotionally when connection feels threatened. Right? A masculine avoidant will shut down, control, or disappear to protect his freedom, while a feminine avoidant person may look emotionally numb on the surface but feel deeply disconnected and unsupported underneath. So why does this matter? Your attachment style explains the wound. Your energy reveals the healing path. right? When you understand both, you stop trying to fix yourself using somebody else's roadmap, and you start walking the path that actually fits you as a person. Okay, so now that we have a foundation of what each of these little categories mean and how they might relate to your life, one further final point I want to make on this. Just because you label yourself as a dismissive avoidant doesn't mean that you don't have qualities or traits that are in the other type of attachment styles. Very well, you might have that. So labels generally tend to narrow your thinking down to a very fine point, and I want to open that up. You might feel that you're an avoidant person, but come up with the understand that you might have tendencies in the other qualities as well, especially as you try to heal yourself. You're going to notice that you do bounce around more as you get into this healing journey here. So how do we heal? That is the main question here. How do we heal from whatever this attachment style is so that we can move to the secure attachment? So in order to do that, we have to understand a couple things here. As a person, we have a frame that creates our reality in us, right? And we're going to start here with the mental frame A. And this mental frame that you run your life by is run by 4 different things. And they start off with laws, rules, beliefs, and stories. And so let's get down to what each of those actually mean. So we're going to start with laws here. Laws, they are the hardwired foundation of your reality. These are the deep internal truths that feel non-negotiable. Most people don't even question them because they feel like facts. But here's the catch. Most laws started as rules that hardened over time. For example, I can't trust anyone. I'll always be rejected. Now, these aren't laws of the universe. They're just scars pretending to be truth. So laws only shift through massive trauma or powerful truth. Okay? And then we're going to move over to rules. Rules, these are the behaviors that you follow to stay safe. Rules sound like I can't do that or I always have to do this. They form after a belief gets repeated enough times and they become the blueprint for how we react. Example, I can't speak up when she's upset. So that's not a law, that's a rule that you built to avoid conflict. Rules are the gateway to the deeper prison. From rules, we move over to beliefs. Beliefs, these are the lenses that you wear without even realizing it. Beliefs are born from experience. Sometimes it's just a comment, or sometimes it's something you saw on TV or a painful moment, right? You don't even remember when they got installed into your brain, but they do run the whole system. For example, love has to be earned, right? I'm only valuable when I provide. These beliefs create the rules, and the rules reinforce the laws. And let's move over to the final one here of stories. Stories, this is the fuel that keeps it all alive. Stories are the meaning that you attach to your experiences. They are the daily reinforcement of your entire frame. For example, she's hard to please. I'm just not good at relationships. These are lies dressed up as truth, recycled until they feel real, right? This story is the access point. You can't just think positive to change your life, right? We've all done positive affirmations and seen no changes from it, right? You might bring surface level changes, but it doesn't actually change how you think or who you are inside just by reciting a bunch of, positive affirmations. That doesn't work. You must expose the lie that you've accepted as truth, and then insert a new truth strong enough to shift the entire frame. So let's zoom back out here. Again, this is the mental frame this is our current reality that we are currently living. So how do we make this change? Go from whatever piss poor life that we're living into the new, secure, beautiful life that we're trying to go to. The only way to access this mental frame is to pierce it with a story, right? And this is why storytelling is so powerful. This is why you can remember a story with like 80% accuracy after you've heard it once. But like a technical jargon, like a math equation or something, you've got to practice that over and over again. You've got to write it down over and over again before it finally gets ingrained into your brain, right? It's through the stories that will start to shift your beliefs, change the rules, and alter the laws that you currently live by. So how do we do that? We change the story by what we call walking the block. So let's use the example here. You just got in a fight with your wife, right? And if you're a woman, you got in a fight with your husband, okay? In my coaching practice, I have a tool that makes this unbelievably easy. But if you're not part of that, you can journal this and it'll have the same kind of effects, right? So when you get in a fight with your spouse, I want you to take out your journal and I want you to write down the story as you see it, right? What happened? What are the facts about the story that happened? From here, we move over to my story. And in my story, the goal here is to release all these emotions. And so if you're thinking that my wife is a fucking bitch, you write out my wife is a fucking bitch. You do not censor yourself. If you censor yourself, you're holding on to some of those emotions and you're not releasing them, right? If your husband is the biggest asshole that you know, write that down. Because if you don't do that, if you censor yourself, again, you're holding on to those emotions and not releasing them. And if you don't release them here, the next two sections are not going to be as potent. You're not going to get as much out of it if you don't release them here. The goal here is to get tired, to fatigue our emotional system so that we naturally move into the more logical thinking systems here. So once you've written out your story and all the feelings associated with your story, we move over to the opposite story. In the opposite story, we have to consider everything I just said. What if that was wrong and this opposite version is true, right? So I want you to consider what would it be like if the opposite version was the truth. Once you write that down, come up with a whole new perspective on this, then we now move into the desired story. Most people would rather be right than to get what they want. Let me say it again. Most people would rather be right than get what they want. You can't get what you want and be right at the same time. And so that's what the purpose of this desired story comes in. Tony Robbins, one of his most famous quotes is, change your story, change your life. And that is what we're doing here. We are piercing the mental frame with a new desired story. So if you got in a fight with your spouse and you both did this exercise, write the desired story on a separate sheet of paper and then come together. Come together and either exchange papers and allow each other to read it or verbally say them out loud and then have him do the same thing. Right? If you both can communicate this, you can meld your desired stories together to come up with a desired story together, right? And how to move forward from this conflict. This is where you start to create boundaries about how you're going to treat each other. You're not going to talk to me that way because I feel really hurt and unseen and unsafe when you talk to me that way, right? And so we're going to establish rules on how to move forward after this argument. But we can't do that if we don't walk the block and start changing the story, right? What happens when you start doing this? You move from frame A over to the mental frame B. And what that looks like, if you do that enough times, it looks like this. You move from A to frame B to C to D to E to F to G. You expand yourself, and each time you move to a new mental frame, you get closer and closer to that securely attached person that you're looking for, right? This is the goal of relationships, to continually expand your possibility, get closer. Once you guys think you're close, you're as close as you can be, boom, a new frame opens up, and you guys have unlocked a new potential to what your relationship is capable of. Right? This is where you see old couples on a park bench just holding hands and they just can't spend one moment without each other. They've done this work. They've had these hard conversations, right? And so this is our goal, to get to the top of this pinnacle, right? This securely attached way of life, right? This is where your relationship blossoms, where you guys can have a conflict and overcome it within the same day, right? You've learned the techniques to have these hard conversations, and you're not constantly blaming the other person for, you always do this to me, you always do that to me, instead of, I feel like this when you do this. And we can move forward from that. That is the entire goal here. This video here encompasses everything you need in order to start to heal your own relationships, right? And to move forward towards that secure attachment style. But if you feel like you do need extra help with this, I offer 2 different ways you can work with me. One, in a group form, a little bit cheaper, and then another one where it's a one-on-one where I will work directly with you. If you're interested in learning more about that, there's a Google document in the description below. Check that out. But other than that, make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.